Welcome back to Red Zeppelin Under the Influence. We are here in our lovely record store. This is a podcast where we talk about musical influences and how they've influenced us and as well as the music industry. Katie, as you can see, was not able to be here today, so we have our good friend Toby filling in with her. You want to say hi, Toby? Okay, he says hi. So,
oh my God.
shut up. So, before we get into things, I want to introduce our guest, which is our friend Cole Burnett, who goes by God of Love.
Glad to be here, Bailey.
Cole used to work at our sister store, the Groovy Coop, which is how I ended up working here, is because I took Cole's place, right?
Basically.
Yeah, so...
Basically. Sorry.
So, thank you for that, because I
You're
wouldn't be
welcome.
here.
Did I introduce you to Katie? I feel like I did. I feel
Probably,
like
yeah.
you came in a couple times and you were like, I needed a new job or something. Or you had just moved to the area or you were going to move to the area.
I just moved, and I came in, and I knew...
You said something like, are you hiring? Or is
Sounds
she ever
right.
looking?
Yeah.
And I was like, Katie, you know Bailey, right? Like, you guys should meet. You'd love her. She's
Yeah.
amazing. And something like that. Something like she's lazy, but
It's probably right.
yeah. No, it was like literally like, you definitely hire her. And then Katie was like, she's so cool. I'm like, I know, you should. And then she was like, let's do it.
Oh,
And the rest, as they say, is history.
yeah.
And now
And then here
look
we
at
are. Opening a record store. So, Cole, you released your first full length, right? About, when was that? 20?
It was like April last year, I think.
Okay.
It was 2019.
And then you have another album, full length, right? That
Yeah.
you're working on right now.
Yeah. So that the winter after the first album, we started working on the new album. And my producer, Alex, I met through you,
Yes.
incidentally.
Yes. Yeah. We love Alex. Shout out to Alex.
Alex 4, where you at? He is the best. And your stuff, you sent me some early mixes, and then the rest is history. I was like, this guy is really cool. And
Yeah.
he did the St. Yuma stuff. So I'd heard the St. Yuma stuff, and I knew he was working on you on he did a single with St. Yuma, and then an EP with you, and then an album with me.
Yes. Yeah.
That's how it worked. And just like that.
Yep. So we decided to get a little doom and gloom with our artist today.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, it's the best. So we are going to start with one of my personal favorites, Tom Waits. I personally have been heavily influenced by him in my own music. I remember, I think the first time I ever saw anything of his, I want to say it was an ACL performance, but he was on stage. I don't know if you've seen this. He was on stage. He had like two old gas tanks beside him, and then so he was kind of like slumped over like this, and then he was smoking a cigarette, and then just started like...
When is this? Is this recent?
No, it was an older one.
Like 70s old, or like we're talking like, like in the 2000s?
Probably 2000s.
Is he old in this? Like
He's older.
older?
But he...
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can't remember what album it was for, but so I just like instantly fell in love with the theatrics of it. And it actually kind of, because I love stage design. That's why I went to art school, was to go into sculpture to eventually do stage design. And so I'm kind of incorporating that into my own performances. And that was like, I think I saw that in high school, and it was kind of like a trigger for me.
Yeah, like the theatricality of it.
Yeah. So, and then my band and I did a Tom Waits tribute last year. No, I think it was a year ago from this past December.
Like a Tom Waits
Trip. So like,
like a show, or are you talking about
yeah.
like a?
So
Oh, okay.
it was a bunch of local artists that all got together on Tom Waits' birthday, and
Oh,
we all did like 2 songs each. We just covered Tom Waits songs.
which songs
And
did you do?
we did Downtown, and oh my god, I cannot remember the name of it. It has something to do with. Hold on, I've got to find this.
I hope this takes a long time.
Stop. We did Little Drop of Poison.
Oh, I don't know that song.
Yeah. Well,
Great track. Shit.
it's very like. I mean, it sounds what you would think it would sound like.
I actually did. I think I did listen to that recently, like for the first time.
Yeah.
Now that you say it, because he kept coming up on my Spotify Discover Weekly or whatever. Because I went through that Tom Waits phase.
Yeah.
And that later became Tom Waits.
Yeah.
Like, just kind of like in the background always.
Yeah.
But that came up recently, and it's kind of like, is it on Rain Dogs?
It is on. I want to say Orphans.
Oh, okay. See, I'm not there yet with Tom Waits.
I want to say it's on Orphans. So, when did you discover Tom Waits?
TW. I want to say it was like, I'm trying to think of like the song that that really got me. But honestly, it was probably sometime in LA when I lived in LA like 4 years ago. No, it was before that, because my brother came across Nighthawks at the Diner.
Okay.
That's what that's called, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were just loving the hell out of it, because the first thing he showed me, so like, which I had obviously heard of Tom Waits before, and heard stuff from like The Mule, because that came out, while I was like probably blooming in a lot of ways as far as what I was listening to, like, and so I heard some of that, and I was like, okay, I get it. This guy's great. But like, I hadn't like really dug into him. And then Nighthawks. So I was probably like, I want to say like somewhere between 18 and 21. Okay. And then, cause Chase was like, listen to this line, my brother. Yeah. And it was, I'm so horny, the crack of dawn better watch out for me. And I was like, yeah, that's my shit. And then that's on there with, Warm Beer and Cold Women, which is one of my favorite Tom Waits songs. So I was like, I fucking love this guy, and all the quirky, like, long, like, intros, and all the well, I was on some street and blah, blah, blah. So that was probably like 20, somewhere between 2013 and 2014. Yeah,
I was in high school. I just remember like instantly, like I said previously, just falling in love with the theatrics of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, but what I find interesting is you can clearly see kind of a shift where he kind of evolved into that. So when he first started, it was a lot of like crooning, a little bit more jazzy, and then
real folky in the first album, right?
Yeah.
Like, hope that I don't fall in love with you. Like, super folky.
Exactly. There's a clear shift where you can tell, like, it just got very dramatic, and he started, growling more with his voice, which I think I remember. I either saw a video, some sort of interview, or I read something that his wife was actually the one behind all of the like weird, quirky stuff. Like, she was the one that was kind of pushing him towards that direction.
Interesting.
Which I find really interesting.
Yeah.
It's like it was in him. He just kind of like needed that push to get there. And then here we are.
What was that like? I feel like asking these kind of questions might lead to like massive misinformation being passed out to listeners who will be like, wait a second, no, that's fucking wrong. But when did he, was it Rain Dogs that was the... Because I have no idea of like that chronologically where...
Let's pull it up. Because he has so many albums.
He does. But like Rain Dogs seems to be the one that everybody's like, oh shit.
Rain Dogs is my favorite. There's something about that album. It's good, like, all the way through.
Even on that album, I tend to skip to the, like, ones that are just more straightforward and sad, drunk songs.
So he's got quite a few, and then there's Blue Valentine, Heart Attack and Vine, which is kind of more of,
Does that
like,
have
a little bit
Waltzing
bluesier.
Matilda on it? Is that?
No.
Yeah. Okay, never mind. Does that have...
And then we have Swordfish Trombones, which is...
That's...
and that was 1983.
Okay.
So he goes from Heart Attack and Vine, and then he did a soundtrack.
He did a lot of the soundtrack of Basquiat too, right?
I don't know.
Because that's another place I remember, like, early on, right after high school, hearing, like, who the fuck is this? And it's like him and piano in, like, the Basquiat movie.
Yeah.
With David Bowie.
Probably. So yeah, it looks like 1983. I mean, that's just, like...
Good to know.
Observation.
I was like, that's a weird time for an album like that to come out. It feels like
Sure, yeah.
You think about everything else that happened in the early '80s, like
right, yeah,
the Talking Heads and Michael Jackson and Prince
it's
and stuff.
Very different.
Somewhere in there, Tom Waits is putting out. Like,
but I think, I mean, if you go back and listen to it, it's kind of timeless. Like, it's not dated at all.
Sure.
It's very inventive. I think that's what I love about him so much too. There's not really an album that you listen to. Maybe like his first one on Closing Time, you can kind of hear 70s influence.
Yeah.
But majority of the time, to me, I think they all sound pretty timeless.
Yeah. Just kidding. Well. No, definitely. 100%.
Okay, so now we are going to ask Toby some questions. Obviously, since we can't physically ask Toby, we have a medium that is going to interpret.
Okay. Yeah, you look great. You look great. It's from the first time. I know. Just talking to make you. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So this is Elvis.
You can call me Elvis.
All right. So first question.
Call me whatever you want.
Toby, where are you originally from?
Interesting. Where Toby says that he comes from a small little corner in New Orleans, and that Toby grew up basically without a mother or father. Oh wow! And that he was basically raised by witches in New Orleans, and he just was taught a lot of voodoo, and there's much more. It's quite a bit, but I'll leave it at that. New Orleans.
Very nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, she says.
Okay, so next question. So, Toby, we have noticed that you're missing some arms. I'm sure there's a story behind that. Would you like to tell us?
Oh, wow. Oh, my God. Oh, wow. Oh, my God. I'm sorry. That's a horrific story. I don't even know where to begin on that one. He was... Toby said that he was rowing a boat whenever he was a very young child, in New Orleans, in a local pond, and he said that he was rowing the boat with his father, before his father, passed away, and that the father, told Toby that he wasn't rowing quite fast enough, and, his father was a very strong, demeaning man, and Toby said, "Am I rowing fast enough now?" And the father said, "No, you weak little stupid child." And then finally, Toby said, "Well, how about now?" And he rips his own arms off and throws them in the pond. He says, "How about that? And there's blood everywhere." And they got him to the hospital soon enough to save him, but not soon enough to stitch the arms back, though they tried. Next question.
I'm literally crying.
Me too. It's a terrible
So
story.
emotional.
It's a terrible story.
Okay.
Were you just... Yeah.
Okay, Toby. So we obviously know you stay here when we aren't here. Do you have any favorite stories that you would like to tell us of what happens after hours?
Oh, that's cool. Well, Toby said that basically, as soon as you leave and lock up, he turns on Ziggy Stardust, and the ghost of David Bowie comes and visits him in the store, and they just talk about music and their lives in the 70s. Because Toby grew up in the 70s in New Orleans. So he got to see David Bowie once at a show. And anyways, they just basically chill out, listen to records, and talk about life as a performer, which Toby knows a lot about. I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Did Toby perform at all?
In New Orleans?
Yeah.
Quite a bit. Various jazz clubs.
Oh, okay.
But Toby doesn't remember much of that because what? Oh, because Toby was a drunk.
As a kid?
Oh
no.
From the age of 5. Witches, man. So
Probably from
the
losing
witches,
his arms too.
The witches were very bad influence, apparently, from what I'm gathering so far. No, okay.
Okay, next question.
Go ahead. Toby said that.
What do you love about Katie, Declan, and I?
Not a damn thing. I'm joking. I'm joking. That's not what he said. I know Toby. I know. I'll tell him. Well, let's start with Declan. Yeah, Declan, it's his hair. and at times his goatee when he shaves just the goatee. And his posture. And then Katie, with Katie, it's apparently her ambition. And how she balances it with being such a great mother to not only her children, but also to I'm quoting, to me, just a poor mannequin who only knows the harsh streets to have such a sweet home is wonderful. So Toby loves that about Katie. And Bailey, oh, that's so sweet. Just, your talent in music just shines through you, Toby says, and he just is so in awe of how you light up a stage, and a room for that matter. That is so, I couldn't have put it better myself, Tobe.
Oh, that's so nice, Toby.
Toby won Kenobi. I know you have. I know. Later. Next question.
All right. Let's see. What is the next question? All right, Toby. So we have recently dealt with some stealing from our store. I know, terrible. What happens to people? What would you do to someone who has stolen from us?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, sweet Moses. Oh, oh, oh. Gee. Well, Toby, that might be a little much for the listeners of this podcast. For fuck's sake. The children could be listening to this. And I don't think anybody should hear that. Suffice to say, it would not be good. And they shouldn't do it. And yeah, Toby would do bad things. And I definitely will not sleep well tonight. My God. What a horror show. What did they do to you in New Orleans?
Yeah, sounds like we better watch out for Toby.
You're telling me.
All right. Toby, what is your favorite movie?
Oh, me too. Mrs. Doubtfire. I would have guessed Mannequin. For obvious reasons.
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Mrs. Doubtfire. Yes, well,
Why?
it's all about a man. It's all about a man trying to be someone else, someone he's not. And he says, apparently I sound like Mrs. Doubtfire, which I resent, but...
Yeah, Elvis does. What about Toby? Toby doesn't sound like him.
Toby doesn't sound like anything. He speaks telekinetically. You have no idea what that sounds like because you don't speak telekinesis like I do. Altros do. But Mrs. Doubtfire. Mrs. Doubtfire.
All right. Interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Double identity stuff, you know. Toby can't speak for himself, so he understands what it's like to put on a face.
That's deep.
Because he's a fucking mannequin. He's only got one face and he didn't choose it.
All right. Last question, Toby. What is your favorite band?
Toby just gasped. Oh, me too. It's so funny because it's literally all trolls love this band. It's his favorite band. I didn't read this question beforehand. Is the Dropkick Murphys. Because his family hails from Ireland originally, so.
Oh, okay. So
And
did
he
you
loves the film The Departed.
did you grow up listening to Dropkick Murphys?
Apparently, yes. And I don't know how to pronounce that word, but he saw them play in a lot of clubs in New Orleans.
Oh, okay. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Toby. Thanks for talking with us.
He says you're welcome.
And thank you,
Elvis Troll.
for
Just Elvis if you want, but
thanks, Elvis, for
no problem.
being
It's a
our
pleasure.
medium today.
Anytime. Anytime. Anytime.
All right, Cole. So, your your artist that you chose today was
Nick Cave. Yeah.
so
And the bad seeds.
so yeah. What about Nick Cave do you love?
Can I say everything?
Yeah.
I'm joking. No, there's a lot I don't like about him. I'm just kidding. There is, but
That's a good way to start
that's
it.
not a good way to start it. I love that Nick Cave, and I've talked to you about this before, he became Nick Cave. I'm sure in a lot of ways he was born Nick Cave, but he talked, one of the first things that got me into him was watching an interview with him talking about seeing a rock star on magazines whenever he was a kid and wanting to become that. Not just, this is like your early like years, whenever you don't really, you don't have great taste yet. You don't know what will be the music that surrounds your life forever.
Yeah.
or will influence you. He was so influenced by that persona, he wanted to become, maybe like one of his earliest inclinations was to become a persona, and then out of that bloomed into like all the other, things that was Nick Cave, his talent, his
Yeah.
ability to attract a crowd, or to manipulate a crowd, or to impress a crowd, or to turn off a crowd, to make people angry. All of that came from probably like some early inclination of wanting to be just a fucking rock star. And it's in the way he dresses, it's in the way he walks, it's in the way he treats his music, it's in the way he treats people. And that's changed over the years and it's evolved, but it's always into this bigger and grander version of Nick Cave.
Yeah.
It's never, you don't really see these big periods where Nick Cave takes this hard left. There probably were times for like a second, but if you're watching interviews of him in like early Bad Seeds days, or like late, like, the early documentaries they did in like the late 80s and then the 90s, and then, there's some like early footage of like the birthday party in the 80s, and then there's stuff that just like, he's always Nick Cave, and he's always becoming what he is now. And he's 62, and he's still like this evolving fucking god that's more and more Nick Cave. It's more and more you never see him outside of a suit, or it's more and more his hair. He dyes it black now. At some point, like, he got plugs, and you don't even fucking question it. You don't think about it, because he has to be Nick Cave. So that's probably the biggest thing I love about him. Before I got into his music, it was that.
Yeah.
Because I relate to that like a ton.
Yeah. Well, those are those are always my favorite artists. Like when they just kind of embody who they are and embrace it and just continue to grow.
Yeah.
Like what you were saying. I mean, that's kind of what, like, all my favorite artists that I can think of have been that to a certain extent. And that's what I aspire to be for myself, It's like, I would hope as an artist you would just want to just, but there's a lot that don't, right? Like there's a lot that, which is fine. Like that's how they want to, release art.
I think it's weird because it's like an inward thing. And Nick Cave talks about this a
sure,
lot
yeah.
too. He talks about going inward and inward. And he talks about how Kanye's, there's a Red Hand Files recently where he talks about Kanye being our greatest artist in the sense of going inward into his own madness. Art is very selfish. And to make great art, you incidentally have to get to know yourself more and more and more. Like Faulkner talks about in his like Pulitzer Prize or Nobel Prize speech about the matters of your own heart being, like, at the end of the day, the most important thing to you. Because if you can rightly describe that, and you can describe, like Nick Cave describing like himself, his own problems, his relationships, inventing these stories and all of that, it's like going deeper into himself is a way of like connecting to the world more, which we see as backwards, because now artists want to like connect to the world and like write songs that'll be like have like these like wonderful like strong political messages, or like I'm here for you, which the Beatles did really well.
Yeah.
But Nick Cave's like the type where he just wants to go into his own story more and more, and more and more people as he's gotten older have related to that and wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Which I just fucking love.
I feel like I feel like in general people don't do that. Like it's hard to go inward, right? Like no one likes to do that. No one likes to really dissect their deepest thoughts or, emotions, but I feel like especially when it comes to art, that's I don't want to say the only way, but it's a very important step if you really want to like get what you're trying to say across,
For sure.
Like I don't know how you could do it any other way. Like there's something to be said about being so vulnerable with yourself and being okay with that, to then in turn, be able to release that.
Yeah. And he in Ghosteen, he talks about his own son and the death of his son, and like he's relating like his process with that with also like his career, his relationship with his wife, and then he goes into like this thing about Elvis, and like it's like all of life and time and rock and roll inside of this album.
Yeah.
But like the vulnerability involved in like writing about your own son while still like admittedly controlling your own persona and your own, that's a very dangerous road to go down because you're like, I'm sure as an artist you're thinking like, I'm writing about someone so close to me. I'm getting so vulnerable while I'm still Nick Cave. Like, how do I do that? How do I,
Yeah.
keep a balance there where like the art shines through while I'm also like have integrity about this, and like that's something, and it's all over his Red Hand Files, like this constant like dialogue with his fans and with himself of like how to maintain integrity as an artist. And the biggest reason I think people don't do that now is because it's like so much less marketable,
Yeah,
and it's also like
for
so
sure.
much harder on your personal life because you end up doing things and saying things. Imagine like anytime you write a girl's name into a song, that girl forever is there. Like,
Yeah.
which obviously I have, some experience with that, but it lives there. And then when that relationship ends, you have like this like little framed moment. And Nick Cave, like it's all with Alice, there's so many of those like pretty blatantly like and a lot of his stuff's really sexual, so like there's a lot of like experiences and memories and stuff, and then mixed in with fiction. And he's very dark, so his vulnerability is like being okay with how brash he can be and how like insane he can be. And
Yeah.
that's like its own vulnerability.
Yeah.
And
Well,
he gets
he
away with
kind of
it.
like does that on stage too. Like he shows.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. He's like he'll like take the mic and like kind of poke it into people's heads and stuff, and like just crawl over people. And like biggest thing I think with someone like him, and Ricky Gervais actually talks about this, he trusts his audience. Like, someone asked Ricky Gervais, like, how do you know like you're not just gonna get booed off the stage when you say some of these like completely politically incorrect things? And he just says, I trust them to like be with me on this, like, or to just understand where I'm coming from, and that
Yeah.
I'm not like a bigot or an asshole, or I think Nick Cave does the same thing. And Matt Berninger from the National, he'll walk straight into a crowd, and he's pushing 50 if he's not 50, and he has this energy and this trust to his audience that he's willing to dive in with them, leave security behind, and just be surrounded by
Yeah.
people who can touch him and slap him and do all this stuff. And
So as a performer, have you been inspired like from his performing?
yes, but at the same time, like pretty early on, like through other artists, I think I was like who I was on stage was kind of like crafted before I got into Nick Cave. Like when I was like 14 to 16, I would watch Arcade Fire shows, and seeing their energy on stage, I was like, that's what people want to see. And I was able to find that on stage. Like, I was outside of that, I was pretty shy, but on stage I found this like ability to like really soak in all the attention I was getting and love it and let that fuel me and
Yeah.
do all these things that people thought we were just high as a kite, or on all these kinds of drugs, which I was like sober as fuck, and I didn't discover that shit till later. And we were
Yeah.
just so into that energy, so I
Yeah.
was able to kind of do that before. And then Nick Cave is kind of like, in a weird way, not only, it's not so much the performance he's influenced as much as like who I am leading up to the performance, and then letting myself be embodied by my life as an artist, rather
Yeah.
than kind of like doing the cop out and being like, I make art, or I make music or whatever. Like, he gets so like, people think it's pretentious because he just lets it be himself. That's what he wants to be, so he becomes it. So he speaks. It's all that. So like for me, that's where the influence comes from. Is
Yeah.
like, yes, I want to perform like the way he does, but I don't think I quite can do that. But I can be
Yeah. Yeah.
God of love. I can be like this. If you work hard enough and you build into it over, and you become like that thing. And then when you get on stage, it's almost like most of the work's done for you before you even start playing, because people have this
All the-
expectation.
yeah.
And
Well,
that's
there's just
that's
like
what I
a
want.
certain energy that you get from the crowd too.
Yeah.
That just like right when you hit on stage, it's like already set almost.
Yeah.
If you're in the right crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some that are dead, right? But once it's right, it's like it's just kind of like an invitation to open up to be
Yeah.
able to do that.
I was in some bands where like it felt like we just had to play like the opening chord to a song, and they were just dancing. And it was like the audiences, like they would come to our shows with that expectation to dance. That's why they wanted to be there. We never had to say like, "All right, now this is the dancing song." It just like happened
Yeah.
because there was just like this natural energy. And it's because we were giving everything on stage, but also
Yeah.
because they had been to other shows where it had happened, and so they were like, they came to this one like that's what you do at this kind of show, and I worry that like I'm getting too old for that to like re-garner that kind of thing, which it just takes time. But I've been in bands where we had that. It's like, I'm gonna crowd surf. Like before you go into the show, you're like, I'm gonna jump into this crowd. I'm gonna pull a stranger's hair, or like, actually recently I threw like years ago, but recently I found out that this really offended somebody. I like threw my sweat all over somebody in a song, like a stranger, because there was always a part of this song where I would go and I'd pick a stranger and I'd quote this line that had to do with strangers, and so I did this, and I just sweated all over him. I took his hat, I put it on, I took it back, and I thought he loved it, because usually that goes over smashingly, and he did not. He hated it. And
Oh no.
I found out he's always kind of been like, "Fuck Cole," kind of like secretly, not so secretly,
Yeah.
hated me for that. And
Yeah.
these are the risks.
Well, yeah, and I'm like, how many times do you think Nick Cave has done something to an audience member and they're just like,
That's the thing. I don't think he gives a fuck. Like I think
right,
like
right.
like he's much sweeter now, but I'm sure like at that time,
Yeah.
especially when he was like doing like heroin and all this
Yeah.
stuff, he was probably just like, well, this is fucking rock and roll, it's the 80s. He's probably just letting loose.
So Nick Cave has shown up in some film, and his music's all through film. What do you think it is about his music that directors and filmmakers just gravitate towards and want to use?
Well, Nick Cave's music really creates a space, whether it's like Into My Arms on About Time, or there's like a funeral scene where Bill Nye is like, and play that Nick Cave track I like, and the song plays, and it's a funeral, and it's just perfect because he's creating this space around like death and religion and his own spirituality. The song does, and that's in the movie. So it's kind of like you kind of have a lot of your work done for you in a scene like that. A filmmaker does when you bring in a song like that. And then Red Right Hand is in fucking everything.
Yeah.
Because it's a tone setter. It's like you get exactly, and it's usually like a quirky, like kind of criminal type thing. And then it was done perfectly in Peaky Blinders, where it's like, yes, that's how probably Nick Cave really likes to see it done, and not in Dumb and Dumber. Like that's it. It's in Dumb and Dumber, so that scene in Dumb and Dumber where
Is it really?
he gets his hand stuck because he's trying to get the porno mag, and the old lady's coming by, and like he says something like, "I guess it's true what they say about the elderly. They're dangerous behind the wheel." You don't remember that? No. I've seen it a lot, but it's in that scene. It's like, oh, Nick Cave's on the Dumb and Dumber soundtrack now.
Yeah.
Which probably like paid a lot of bills, but also like it's just funny to think that song can set that tone, and then also because he gets, it's just some of his stuff is like has this like carnival element to it,
Yeah.
and this like really old school like noir element mixed in with like fantasy, and then like really hard hitting down to earth lyrics at times. Like Red Right Hand, some of those lyrics are just astounding. Wings of Desire, perfect example. Nick Cave's actually in the film playing Nick Cave, and he is singing a song, and you can hear his thoughts because the movie's about angels who walk amongst people, but people can't see them obviously because they're angels. They can hear people's thoughts, and they're at a Nick Cave show, and like Nick Cave is like this perfect character in the movie because the movie's all in Berlin, pre the wall coming down, and there's just like this great punk rock scene going on, and he's in the movie for a second, and it's like perfect because it's like this dark, and also Nick Cave is incredibly like gothic.
Like to that point, I can see why someone would want to choose his image and his sound to represent a
Yeah.
visual, you know.
Yeah, in that case, it was like this. Everything he's about seemed to fit really well in that film. Like just the energy he brought to it, like this. Because there's always like this sort of positive note, even though his music's so dark
Yeah.
and heavy. There's some sort of like, and I think that's from like the punk influence and just the
Yeah.
overall rock and roll element. It never gets too dark. He's always trying to keep this train moving forward, and which is like to me like the basis of rock and roll music. There's always like this steady sort of like, it's never too dire.
Yeah.
It's like he talks about Leonard Cohen being chained to this idea of like sardade. I don't know how to say it, but it's like a Portuguese word. But he talks about like the artist being chained to this emotion of like not happy, not sad, but like this side of like sort of like
Yeah.
bittersweet love affair with life that's never truly brings happiness, but never truly brings like this, you know, it's like right in the middle. It's like sad and happy together, and being chained to that, and it kind of like moves you forward. And his art's always moves. That's why he's still making great albums at 62. It's just
Yeah.
pulling him forward, and that's kind of like the positive undertone in every dark Nick Cave album.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I wrote him a letter on Red Hand Files.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't even a question because you're supposed to ask questions, and I had asked a question before, but I didn't really like the question. I think everybody does that. They write one question and they write another one like, this one's better. But instead of writing a question, I just did what, and I wrote this in there. I think a lot of people probably do this like, thank you, because he reads as many as he can and himself. So it's kind of like this thank you / like, you know, you've been a huge influence, and also like, you know, I want you to know I'm trying to carry on the torch in some small way. And like, I suffer over this, I do all this, you know, I work hard, and you've been a huge influence and inspiration in that way, blah, blah. And just the idea that you'll read this is enough. Like, and then I finished it and I was like, this is crazy. I think he's going to read this one day. Like that was such a, as I'm writing, it was like cathartic, but yeah, so that was special.
That's
even
cool.
though like, you know, Crawford's friend met him, and then
Really?
Nick Cave and Crawford's friend tried to FaceTime him, and Crawford did not have reception. Or he was at work or something, and he found out later, and he just gets a picture of his friend with Nick Cave, because they're kind of like not really buddy, but like they'd met a couple times, and Crawford was like this close to FaceTiming with Nick Cave, like, "Hey, how's it going, Crawford?" And Crawford was like, "What the fuck?" Crawford's my friend that works at the cigar shop, because people should know that. But yeah, that's a little. There's a Nick Cave anecdote.
There you go.
To finish the subject.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, Cole.
Anytime.
So, like I said previously, you have an album out on Spotify and iTunes. You have a new one coming out.
Yes, the new one's called "Do Your Worst."
Any time frame you think?
I hope to be releasing singles this year, but
Okay.
It keeps getting pushed back. But looking to release the album in April of next year.
Okay, it's coming up. It'll be here fast.
It'll be
When I was releasing my EP, it was like, oh, I have 6 months, and then like a week left. It just like flew
because there's so
by.
much to
Oh,
fucking
there's
do.
so much.
There's
yeah.
so much to do.
Yeah. Well, so Cole Burnett of God of Love. We could
Just
find,
call me God.
okay, God. Find you on all social media, Instagram, Facebook.
Yep. At God of Love Music.
Okay.
And I'm on the Spotty. I'm on Apple Music. I'm on the SoundClouds.
YouTube.
YouTube's. All that.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching and listening. Join us next week and make sure to give us a follow and subscribe.